It's about 6 o'clock, so we're about to begin. Welcome everyone to the Women in Sports panel presented by PNC Bank and of course brought to you by the Jacksonville Icemen, our gracious hosts here at ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena this evening. My name is Mia O'Brien. This is my second time moderating this wonderful panel. I am a host and the director of multimedia production at 1010XL, the flagship radio station of the Jacksonville Jaguars and Florida Gators. Before we get into today's discussion, I want to give the opportunity to each of these wonderful ladies to introduce themselves individually, as well as give us an idea of how they are involved in the wonderful world of sports. Now, what I didn't tell you guys, and hopefully Sid, I think you got this from here, I will pass the mic to our first two panelists, and then you guys can share that mic. So, without further ado.
Hey everyone, my name is Nancy Hogshead. I'm pleased that my brother, Andy Hogshead, is also here, along with some friends, but we don't want to take forever. So, I'm an Olympic triple gold medalist in swimming in the 1984 Olympics. Those are the friends I was talking about. And I am a civil rights lawyer. I run a nonprofit called Champion Women, and we provide legal advocacy for girls and women in sports.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ivana and I serve as the Vice President and Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at Edward Waters University, which is an NCAA Division II institution right here in Jacksonville. Been there for about 2 years, but I've been in sports my entire life. I'm a former Division I volleyball student athlete, coached volleyball at Division I and Division II levels before retiring, and then transitioned into administration. And so happy to be here. I'm also joined by my family, my 8-year-old daughter Melanie, the love of my life Camus, and my trusty assistant Tyler. So thank you.
Hey y'all, my name is Sydney Stropes, better known as Coach Sid to some in the room. I am one of the coaches for the Jacksonville Luna's youth ice hockey program. It's our girls travel program here in Jacksonville. Unfortunately, coaching youth ice hockey in Jacksonville does not pay the bills full time yet, so I also moonlight as an emergency department nurse over at Mayo.
Hi everybody, my name is Kate Waske. I work for the Jacksonville Jaguars on the partnerships side of the business. Been in the NFL for my entire career, working for both the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Detroit Lions, but I also did about 3.5 years in NCAA athletics with the University of Michigan, where I met my soon-to-be husband, which most of you know as number 51, Garrett Van Wyan, the Jacksonville Icemen. But tonight is my night, so let's talk about ladies in sports.
And Kate also may or may not have brought a special furry friend in the back of the room.
I do. So we actually are the full-time puppy raisers for Mathis, who is the Jaguars team dog. We work with Canines for Warriors, and he will be paired with his forever veteran in the spring of 2025 to help a veteran that suffers with PTSD. So shout out to Mathis.
We haven't even gotten to the questions, and I already think the energy in this room could explode. Our wonderful Emily, our coordinator of events here for the Icemen, told me this morning over 100 of you were registered, how excited we were. We're already off to a roaring start. Throughout the duration of today's program, we will have some questions that will be open for all of our panelists, and then we will also have some that are curtailed for certain panelists, but after that panelist responds, feel free to react with any input that you may have. As we celebrate women, it felt like a logical place to start with the CEO of Champion Women. Nancy, from when you competed in college sports to now, 40 years later, how have you seen women's sports and the perception of women's sports change?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I've seen just so many opportunities open up for women. I've also seen just in my era, like somebody said, Chris, who's here from PNG, was saying how that, if you Google you get this big muscle picture, and that was, a little tough. Now we have Alana Marr, who is killing it with, showing that women are not one size, one shape. And, right, so there's a lot more diversity in who women get to be.
Oh, no, come on back to me. Okay, we can share that microphone too. We can share that microphone too, especially because this next question is for Ivana, Dr. Rich. The world of college sports, let's stay there, Ivana. Both men and women, that entire world of college sports, and I'm preaching to the choir, talking to the director of Intercollegiate Athletics at a Division II institution. It has certainly changed drastically in the last 4 years for both men and women, let alone the last 40. Describe what it is like working on the administrative side of college sports in 2024.
Well, I would say every day it's a new challenge, literally a whirlwind. I'll be very transparent. It's a whirlwind. You know, college sports has changed significantly with the latest arbitration, everything that's going on with the NIL, the transfer portal. That's the world we live in now. So what you used to know as amateur athletics, I think in the future is going to be going away. You know, I think athletes are going to be compensated for, even at the college level, more they are being compensated now. And so working as an athletic administrator in intercollegiate athletics, you have to stay in tune with the trends and the changes in athletics because it's changing swiftly. Every year we have new legislation that's being voted on, new rule changes, and so a lot of us, we're just trying to keep up. And so we work together. We lean in on each other at different institutions to try to keep up with the changes in intercollegiate athletics. As a woman in this role, it's just that more challenging, you know, because it's a male-dominated field. And so, you know, as a woman, you have to show up with a higher level of preparation, courage, you know, and stand tall in your beliefs to really make a change. And so it's definitely an interesting time in collegiate athletics.
This next question is actually for our audience. How many of you here today want to work in sports? I figured some of our Lunas want to work in sports, right? All right, we got some others as well. Excellent. If you do, I can tell you from my personal experience, and I know Kate will echo this as well, you are probably going to have to be ready to move around the country if you want to work in sports. You also are going to have to, most likely, be adaptable and well-versed in multiple sports. Kate, I know you referenced it a little bit in your introduction, but can you walk us through your journey in sports from your roots in Michigan to where you are now in Jacksonville?
Absolutely. So growing up, I had a very sporty family. And for those that are close to me know that I played high school sports, but definitely was not talented enough to continue on to collegiate or professional levels. But I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. Fast forward to the University of Michigan, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I had no idea that there was a business side of sports until I randomly stumbled upon a sport management class. And that opened my eyes. I did not know that sports teams had their own analytics departments, finance departments, marketing departments, partnerships departments. And I very quickly realized that I wanted to be involved in sports, but I wanted to be more of the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. I wanted to make the fan experience, the marketing side, the partnership side, a magical experience for everybody that came to work in sports. So at the University of Michigan, I worked with several different teams: women's soccer, women's lacrosse, men's soccer, football, more notably men's ice hockey, and just absolutely fell in love with the business side of things. Fast forward, I got accepted to be the full-time or season-long assistant for the Detroit Lions marketing team and thought that I had made it. I was with my hometown team doing exactly with what I loved, but it very quickly became apparent that there wasn't a full-time position open because those full-time positions were filled with incredible people that were willing to stay. So it became apparent that I needed to start casting a wider net if I wanted to work in sports. So I started applying everywhere. Was not afraid. I applied to jobs on the East Coast, West Coast, and a team, Jacksonville Jaguars, reached out. And they were very interested. And I thought to myself, well, you know, my family, we love going to Florida, but could I work there? What would that be like in a small market team working in the NFL? Very quickly through my interview process, I knew that the Jacksonville market was something special. That win or lose, no matter what the season looked like, people cared. People wanted to be a part of this, something special. So I packed up my bags, packed up the U-Haul, told my parents we were moving to Jacksonville, and very shortly after found myself a home here. And I've been here for 3+ seasons, and not every season has to be a winning season for us to celebrate on the business side. But if I was not willing to take that leap of faith to go to a different market, travel across the country, I wouldn't be where I am now. And that's my biggest advice to somebody that is looking to get into the world of sports is don't be afraid to take that leap of faith, because failing isn't failing unless you learn something, unless you truly grow. And for me, my growing opportunity was moving thousands of miles away from my family. And luckily enough, I am the family member that everybody wants to visit now. Always have a spare bedroom, spare air mattress, spare bedroom for anybody, but you have to be willing to take challenges and take the bet on yourself. And for me, that's moving across the country.
And as Sydney, or I guess maybe we should refer to her as Coach Sid tonight. As Coach Sid is living proof, even if your day job isn't in sports, there are still ways you can be involved in sports as an adult, even if it means being a little bit sleep deprived. A little bit, yeah. The 12 to 12, I mean, I used to work that schedule. I know that from TV news. Sid, take us through a day in the life as a nurse at the Mayo Clinic and then coaching the Lunas hockey program.
Certainly. So thank you for that awesome question. Being a emergency room nurse, there's definitely a little bit of lack of sleep and an abundance of caffeine running through my veins, especially as some mornings might start out at 7 a.m. over at the Community First Igloo, coaching learn to play hockey, followed by rec hockey, followed by a Lunas game, and then jumping right in my car and headed to the hospital, work from noon to midnight, get home around 1 a.m. and turn around and do the whole thing the next day. So a little bit of a lack of sleep, but what there definitely is a lot of passion. And something I learned playing youth sports growing up is that you need to find what you're passionate about and really stick with it. What I learned in youth sports, I carry with me today, and a lot of the big things that I learned were the importance of community and truly finding a family within that community. Also learning discipline, learning different leadership skills. And I think those three things, leadership skills, discipline, and the importance of not only community but a true family within your community are the things that allow me to also be successful on the nursing side. I can definitely tell you that I feel I have the best job in the world. My whole job is getting to help people feel better. That being said, nobody is ever happy to meet me in my job. If you're coming to an emergency department, it's typically not under the best circumstances. For a lot of people, it might be the worst day of their life. So the chance to get to make somebody feel just 1% better is really a privilege I take, and I really love to do. Now that being said, on the coaching side, y'all are a whole lot happier to see me than most of my patients, I do feel. And definitely though, still that same idea of how can I make you 1% better. And I really do view my goal as a coach is not just to make you the best athlete I can be, which 12 of you, I know we have some big games tomorrow, so I expect some big performances, but also to make you the best person that you can be. And a lot of those lessons you learn not only just on the ice, but also in the locker room, or for me in the back of my mom's car as we were driving to hockey games across the country growing up, everything like that. I like to say there's nothing stronger than a hockey mom in the world, so a lot of great hockey moms that also, you guys are also amazing women in sports that need to be recognized. So yes, there might be a lack of sleep and abundance of caffeine, but there's also a whole lot of passion. And I think whether that's in sports, in life, or anything in between, it's really important to find what you're passionate about and how can you make every single day fulfilling that passion. For me, it's just making people 1% better, whether that's in the healthcare side of things or on the ice.
Slay, Sid, slay. I got the sign for a reason. Building off of that, Sid, I am curious in getting to know you a little bit before our formal program began. You grew up in a military family. You end up in Minnesota, end up a hockey fan for life, a hockey player for life. How do you end up in Jacksonville? And for those who may be interested in maybe not making sports their day job, but having an opportunity with an organization like the Lunas, how do you come across this program?
Certainly. So, like you said, I grew up in a military family to parents that my mom's from Florida, my dad was from California. I don't think they ever saw ice, not even in their waters growing up. So all of a sudden we move up to Minnesota and my brother and I go native, for lack of better words, and we jump headfirst into hockey. My parents had no idea how to even put gear on us. They had to take us to the neighbor's house to get dressed for our first day of practice, which the neighbors thought was cute and funny, and I think they also were judging my parents because my brother and I couldn't skate, and we were 8 years old already, like we were behind the curve. But one way or another, I made my way to Jacksonville. I have a huge cheering section in the back. That's a lot of extended family. Being in a military family, I never got to grow up living down the street from my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, and able to go to dinner whenever I wanted at their house. So I said, when I'm old enough to pick where I want to live down the street from grandma so I could stop by her house whenever I wanted for dinner. At the same time, I knew I wanted to keep hockey a part of my life. I went to college in Miami, and Miami does not have an ice hockey program down there. But my senior year, we started our first ever women's club ice hockey team. So I had a 3-year hiatus from hockey. At first, I told myself I didn't miss it at all, and then I would find myself watching so many more games, missing it. And the second I had the chance to go play in college, we had 7 girls on our team, guys, so you played every single minute, so nobody can tell me they're tired out there, okay? We have more than 7 right now, but it was amazing, and I fell back in love with the sport. And when I moved to Jacksonville, I live in the Riverside area. As I was driving to my apartment for the first time, I passed a sign that says, "Join now, the Igloo," and I go, there's no shot I live less than 5 miles from an ice rink. Sure enough, I do. I took one of my days off from work, walked in the front door, knocked on the hockey manager's office and said, "Hey, my name's Sydney. I play hockey and I would love to coach for you." He looked at me and said, "Okay, you can coach." And I think he thought I was joking at first, and I showed up to 5 ice sessions that week, and he said, "Oh, you're serious about this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, and I want to get involved with the girls program." And sure enough, he gave me that opportunity. So really putting yourself out there and saying this is something I want to do, and always showing up with your best foot forward is a big thing for that.
It's a great message that, while certainly you could be a little sleep deprived after a 12-hour shift, but sports still so important to so many of us, whether it's our primary job, a hobby, a passion, whatever we may identify it as. Why sports is a question that I think so many have found themselves asking, especially here in the year 2024. Everyone knows the power of sports and the impact that goes beyond the final score or the box score of a ball game. Nancy, let's come back to you. Why is sport so important?
So, when a kid has an opportunity, like all of you, to be able to play sports, it's a life-changing event. So we know that sport isn't just associated with kids doing better, and I'll get into what that is in a second, but it's not just associated, but it actually causes it. In other words, if they didn't do it, they wouldn't have these metrics of, no matter what their grades are or whatnot, much more likely to graduate from high school. If they graduate from high school, much more likely to go to college, finish college, major in a STEM career. They make more money as employees. They stay in the workforce. They're in the workforce. And then health-wise, not only do they not have a lot of mental health issues, but in terms of half of all women over the age of 65 have osteoporosis. And the way you prevent osteoporosis is ice hockey. No, is weight-bearing exercise during puberty. And so you're seeing the generation just ahead of me who were told that it wasn't feminine, it wasn't womanlike to play sports. And we're seeing the health consequences as a result of that. Of half of all women over the age of 65 have osteoporosis. Breast cancer, dementia, all kinds of things. Women who have an athlete background have healthier pregnancies. When I was pregnant with twins, and I had a condition called polyhydrosis, which means too much water around the babies. And in addition, I ended up giving birth to an 8-pounder and a 7-pounder. So my doctor told me on the regular that, like, if I had not been an athlete with extremely large lungs and heart, that I wouldn't have been able to do it. That women who are not athletes, that they just can't breathe. They can't get enough oxygen to everybody, and you all know, like, women when they're normal 8 months pregnant and how hard it is to walk up a flight of stairs. So that what it's like, to have a twins pregnancy that's that big, my brother again is here, and we joke that I'm a little too competitive. So when I found out, my doctor was like, "Do you know you break the record for having the biggest belly of my entire high risk life?" And I was like, other people were like, "Don't tell her that." But again, this is an excellent use of our tax dollars. Right? When we think of high school sports, when we think of college sports, and how much of our tax dollars go into it, when it comes to participation, when it comes to having people go for it, the kinds of things that they learn in sports, you cannot learn on a blackboard. You have to have a coach like this to be able to make it happen. And that's what fuels a lot of the work that Champion Women does, to make sure that girls and women have equal opportunities in sports, that they have equal scholarship dollars, that they get treated the same way with recruiting and coaching and facilities and equipment, etc., and that they not face sexual abuse as part of their sports experience, and to make sure that women's sports stays for us, stays for females. So I'm 62 years old. There was a generation ahead of me that gave up their entire professional career so that I could have the opportunities that I had. So I got to not just high school, but full scholarship at Duke University. I wouldn't have had those if that generation hadn't done that for me. So I want to make sure that we keep going, that we take it that much further. So thank you.
Follow-up to that, because as we've found now, sports is important, but organizations like Champion Women are very important. Why was it important for you to create that organization in particular?
Right, so I had been with the Women's Sports Foundation for 30 years, and I was the president and vice president, and I was their legal advisor, and I was their senior director of advocacy, but they weren't willing, any older organization, any established organization that needs to have those partnerships with the corporate people, they can't be at the tip of the arrow, as I call it, right? So what Champion Women does, we are at the very forefront. We are at the tip of we are before anybody else will go out and talk about what schools need to do. If you go on to one of our websites, Title9Schools.com, and you can find every single school in the country, how many opportunities they need to add, how many scholarship dollars they need to add, and how many dollars in recruiting dollars that they need to add. So that's what makes us different from other organizations that are like, yay, women in sports, happy, happy, joy, joy. We are willing to go to schools and say, like University of Michigan and University of Iowa, and we filed 101 complaints with the Department of Education saying these schools are not complying with Title IX. So in total for the country, if women were given the same thing that men are given in sports, that women would have 221,000 more athletic opportunities. That means all of you would have opportunities, would have teams to be able to go to. And when it comes to scholarship dollars, women would have $1.2 billion more in athletic scholarships. So this is a 52-year-old law. The regulations are 49 years old that are endorsing interpreting the statute. And here we are, we still have these enormous gulfs. And since 2010, when Mark Emmert took control over the NCAA, the news is bad in that it's going backwards. So you'd like to think like, oh, history equals progress, that all we need is just more time and it'll solve itself. And that is just not true. That unless we have systemic change, unless we have other ways of enforcing Title IX. Right now, so the NCAA used to be part of enforcing Title IX, be part of requiring schools to provide men and women with equality. So since 2010, the gap between men's and women's sports has grown tremendously. And it's like there's nobody watching the ball. So guess who's responsible for enforcing Title IX? Do you know who? Who makes sure that schools are doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Nobody.
You.
Well, see these girls right here? Only they have standing to be able to either bring a lawsuit or be able to make specific claims with the OCR, meaning, we're not getting the same locker rooms, we're not getting the same equipment, we're not, all those kinds of things. So, right, that is crazy that you're asking in college 18 to 22-year-olds, that you're asking high school athletes to make it equal for everybody else. So, as you said, the Office for Civil Rights is one. But, we filed those 101 complaints. We have yet to see a new team being added yet. So that's what we do. We are the tip. We want more opportunities. We want to make sure that we change the dynamic so that athletes don't have to be obedient and compliant in order to be able to have a sports experience. That dynamic sets them up to be abused. And we want to make sure that women's sports stays for females, stays for us. So, thank you.
$1.2 billion number is just,
Isn't it?
we could spend another 25 minutes just on that. But for the sake of time, come back for part 2 tomorrow. I'm just kidding. And hopefully everyone picked up their bobblehead for Nancy, who will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this evening.
If you don't want your bobblehead, I do.
There you go. See, autographs after the session here. A question now for all of our panelists. How many of you, by a show of hands, have been told you are the first at something? The first woman, the first to do this? All right. This next question is for Dr. Rich, but I wanted to make sure we show that even in 2024, we are still seeing these major milestones. The first woman to do insert blank here. The hope, of course, is that by the time the Lunas are our age, we will be past this part of our history and onto it becoming commonplace for women to serve as CEOs, athletic directors, account executives, coaches, and of course, ADs, like I said, like Dr. Rich. Ivana, what does being the first female athletic director at Edward Waters University mean to you? But also, because it is Edward Waters that gave you this opportunity.
Well, I would say it means everything for me. And as a woman leader, someone that has been in sports my entire life, it means that other girls in sports can do this. They can sit in this seat and rise to the occasion to be an athletic director. There are not a lot of female women athletic directors in the NCAA. When I came into this position in my conference, I was only one of 2. And one left right after that. And so, to provide this opportunity from Edward Waters University, I think it makes that much of a difference that they are championing women. They believe in women in leadership. I have a president that he said he wanted a woman athletic director. He's had male athletic directors. They've done a great job. Love my men, love my males. But women, we just have an extra different type of touch. We see things a little bit differently. And so for me being in this role, I feel that quote, heavy is the crown, or heavy is the head that wears the crown. I really believe in that. And I believe I have a responsibility in this position to excel, to do well, to be prepared or over-prepared, so that I can pave the way for more young women and girls who aspire to be in these positions to do so. Because it's not easy. And a lot of times those doors are not open for women to be in this seat. There are even less women in like your Power 5 conferences that are sitting women athletic directors, and you're still seeing first. Like Candace, who was the AD at Vanderbilt, she was the first female AD in the SEC. Still, that was just a few years back, and so that we're seeing first now, this does show progress, but it also shows that we have a long way to go in providing women with opportunities to serve in leadership roles. And I think the more women that get these opportunities, that excel in these positions, can show everyone that we can sit in these seats and we can do the job just as good as our male counterparts. And so it means everything. And from Edward Waters University, for you that don't know about Edward Waters, it is the first private institution in Florida, is the first HBCU in Florida. And so, it's an institution that has created opportunities for the unmarginalized. And so to provide an opportunity for a woman to sit in this seat, I think is incredible. And it really speaks to the progress that is happening on that campus in the city of Jacksonville.
I was going to ask you to explain, the HBCU part of this, but you did an outstanding job explaining, how important this is, not just for the Division I level to see a woman in that position, but especially for historically black colleges where I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I would think you are very much in a handful of female athletic directors among the HBCUs.
Yes, absolutely. And you actually see a lot more of the women athletic directors at HBCUs because they're buying in. You see a lot in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, one of our Northern Conference Division I HBCU conference. There were 5 women sitting ADs last year. That's the conference I came from. In our conference now, the SIAC, there are 3 of us. And so we're really moving the needle forward. And I think HBCUs are really pushing that and providing those opportunities for women to serve in these leadership positions. There are also 2 women commissioners in HBCUs. And so the MEAC has a female commissioner as well as the CIAA. That's also very rare. And so I think these organizations, these historically black institutions are really providing opportunities, but really making a change and setting the pace for these types of hires.
From athletics on the college side to the professional ranks. Kate, let's go to you. Whether we're talking about how a client is presented to how we present ourselves, explain exactly what an account manager does and what partnership activations is.
Great question. So I am on the account manager side of the activation team for the Jacksonville Jaguars. At the Jaguars, we're split into 2 different subdivisions. Those that go out and sell incredible partnerships. That sales team is brainstorming unique ideas that brands want to be a part of. It's more than just slapping your logo on something. They want to be truly integrated into something that's meaningful with the team. And because the team has a platform, let's figure out new ways to do that. Let's do something that's different. Let's do something that's not copy and pasting from other teams in the league or other leagues. The activation side is those that make the contract come true. So once a contract is sold at the Jaguars, it typically comes to a manager of activation, which is my role. Whether this is your national brands like American Eagle or Sony, or your mom and pop shops that are local to Jacksonville. I treat a multi-million-dollar business, book of business for the Jaguars equally. I will give everybody that works with us equal treatment and give them equal opportunity. Whether or not they take us up on those opportunities has to align with their brand goals, but at the end of the day, my goal is to brainstorm new opportunities for partners, whether that is being involved in our community and doing local cleanups at the historic East Side districts, whether that is doing learning to read programs with players. My job is different every day, but that's what I wanted. I never wanted to sit at a desk every single day and do the same thing over and over and over again. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to be part of the community, and that's exactly, fortunately, what I get to do. Yes, do I get to work with players? Yes, I do, and that's fun. But the most fun of my job is when I get to work with our community in Jacksonville and put a smile on anybody's face. Whether that's working at our homeless shelters, whether that is working at park cleanups. My goal is to be the Wizard of Oz, is to be behind the curtain, making dreams come true. And that's what partnerships is, because every partnership is different. Some brands, their goals might be, just help me get my name out there. I'm a new company or I'm an old company, help me get front of mind for some people. Other people want to do things that are above and beyond, that are extremely different, and they want to test the waters. And my goal is to make those dreams come true, whether or not it's for a partner or for our fan base. Because at the end of the day, you can never predict the product on the ice, on the field, on the turf. That's just what sports is. You can never guarantee that a certain player is going to perform the same way day in and day out. But what I can do is perform the brand in such a way that you're going to know that the Jacksonville Jaguars care. You're going to know that they care about the community, that we're there, we're getting our hands dirty, we are reading books, we are helping children, we are helping members of this community, because that's what it's about. It's being ingrained in the community in such a level that it's like a peanut butter and jelly relationship.
And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't thank not only a partner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, but a partner of the Jacksonville Icemen in PNC for putting on this wonderful Women in Sports panel this evening. One more individual question, and this one will be for Sydney. There's something to be said about what we're doing here today, celebrating and bringing women together. The cooler part is that the Jacksonville Lunas do that each and every day at the Community First Igloo. Sid, there's many young girls who play hockey nationally, though, on boys' teams, and I know you were one of them. Many times that's because there are no girls' teams in the area. I know you were sharing with us before we came up here, and you'll have to explain this to our audience, just how few female hockey programs there are in the Southeast, let alone here in the state of Florida. What does it mean, Sid, to the development of these young student athletes that they do get to play on all-girls teams?
So I can tell you I played with boys all the way up until high school. I got to join my first ever girls travel team when I think I was around 12 years old. And that switching to a girls travel team was really special. I think that there's something to be said about being a part of the locker room. I know that y'all can probably agree. There's been times where you might have to get dressed in the women's locker room, which we're lucky at the Igloo. It's better than the offices, the outside bathrooms, just the random places I had to get dressed growing up because there was no women's locker room. We now have one of the better ones that I've seen at ice rinks. There's always room for improvement, but it's better than what I have seen at other ice rinks for our women's locker room. There's something to be said about that camaraderie that exists within a locker room, that camaraderie that exists within a team, and definitely getting to be amongst a girls' team. There's a lot of development that happens on that social aspect that's also really big. I can tell you some of my best friends to this day are people that I met in those locker rooms, created those relationships with on the ice. There's also something to be said about the development of the game. I like to say, if you guys have ever seen men's versus women's sport, and I can say this across the board, whether it's ice hockey, lacrosse, basketball, or soccer, I like to think that the women's game has a little bit more finesse, and the men's game is a little harder hitting. For someone who doesn't know the sport, you might say, oh, men's hockey is so much more interesting. Well, there's a lot more hits, all right? But if you watch the women's game, there's a lot more beauty in the game, longer stretched ice passes. It does have that, like I said earlier, that finesse aspect to it, which is something that you really get to develop on the women's side. Growing up, playing with the boys, it's awesome, right? You get to have that fun, hit a little harder. And you also get to hang out with the guys, which is a different locker room experience. But having that girls' time with each other, I think, is really beneficial to everyone. It also helps prepare you for the college aspect of the game. Switching at a college level, if you've only played with boys, all of a sudden now switching to an all-girls team, not only is it going to be a different social beast, it's going to be a different beast on the ice. In terms of where we are in Jacksonville, we have girls that travel from Orlando, we have girls that travel from Atlanta to come play with us. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. When I switched to girls, we had people come down from New Jersey, from South Carolina to play with us. Women's hockey is a growing sport. Hockey is a growing sport, especially in the South, and I think anything we can do to support it so that parents aren't taking 4 hours out of their day to drive to practice, right? We have people driving up from West Palm to come to our practices, which is insane to do on a school night, mind you, right? You can only do so much homework from the back of a car, but it's definitely a really special experience to have women's hockey so close to home for a lot of us here.
Yeah, can I just add to what you were just saying that so the chances of being a basketball player and making it to a Division I is 1%, about 1.3%. The chances of most sports is about 2% of high school athletes get to make it onto a college team. The chance for hockey players, it's 13.5%. It is far, far more So your chances of, right, so there's no reason why we should not have more girls hockey programs like the Lunas. So I congratulate you all and wish you the very best.
Let's end with a question for all four of our wonderful, wonderful panelists. If you could give them another round of applause for this final question. We began tonight by asking Nancy to reflect how far we've come since she was swimming at Duke University. Now I will ask all four of you leading ladies, what will be the biggest challenge for women in sports in the next 40 years? Or perhaps if you'd like to answer it this way, where do you think we will be in 2066? And all four of you will have a chance to answer, so whoever wants to answer first.
I want to answer. So, as I said, I'm 62 years old. In the earlier part of my career, I spent what I consider today to be too much time making sure that girls and women had the legal right to be able to play sports, to have equal opportunities. Instead of what we're doing now is actually making sure that girls actually get those opportunities. Sometimes you'll hear somebody say, girls drop out of sports as soon as they start getting interested in boys, or something like that. Nope, that's called victim blaming. If you build it, they will come. There are states like Maine and Nebraska who have they have almost double, or in the case of Maine, more than double the amount of girls who are playing sports than boys here in Florida. Now, it's not that there's any like that boys here in Florida don't want to play sports. It is that schools are having very tiny athletic departments, and colleges and universities far less than that. So what I hope will happen is, I would say in my earlier years, I just thought, well, I mean, Title IX passed, it's, again, 52 years old now, and it'll happen. I thought history equals progress, and let me tell you all, that's not true. That what you need is to have continuous pushing to make sure that these girls, and more like them, actually get those opportunities. I vastly underestimated the power of sexism to stop girls and women from participating in sports. And again, if I had it to do, I've had a lovely, amazing career, and I don't anticipate stopping anytime soon. But if I had to do it over again, I would make sure that girls and women were actually getting what the law requires that they have.
So I would say that I think the future is bright. I think there's still much work to be done, but I really think maybe 40 years from now that we're going to be talking about people like my co-panelists and Judy Sweeten, all those other trailblazers for Title IX. We're going to be talking about a new wave of them, a new wave of activists, the Candace Parkers, the Angel Reeses, the Caitlin Clarks. We're going to be talking about these young women because they're going to help push the needle forward. And like you said, we have to continue to push. I think there's a heightened interest in women's sports, definitely in women's basketball, in women's volleyball. There's now a professional league here in America for women's volleyball. They don't have to go overseas and play, they still go. But I think there's a heightened interest, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more of those leagues, and I think Edward Waters is a testament to that. We just added women's tennis and women's golf as programs at our institution, and we're always looking to add in women's sports. So we're looking into women's flag football, and I think I need to look into women's hockey, women's ice hockey. And so I think the future is bright, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see and be a part of that movement to continue pushing the needle forward.
So for me, what I hope that when I get to eventually be the peak form in hockey, which is that of the hockey mom, if I haven't said it already, it's that I'm not going to have to do what my mom did, which was wake up early to drive me to an 8 a.m. ice hockey practice 40 minutes from home. It's the fact that I'll be able to take my child to a hockey practice that's at a reasonable time, 5 in the afternoon, at a rink only 10 minutes down the road, right? I think that a lot of that comes with the growth of local programs, starting small and starting close to home. What I hope is that we get to the point where the Lunas have equal practices and equal practice times at the Igloo with our junior Iceman co-ed program, right? I think we're getting to the point where you don't have to practice at 8 a.m. as a girl. You can get those more desirable practice times, everything like that. So I think really for me, it's growing the sport at a local level. Also getting to the point where you can walk into a pro shop somewhere and not only buy just all the men's jerseys on the wall, but also grab those of the women's. A lot of people don't know it. The Professional Women's Hockey League just started back up recently. Last season was their first season. You can stream all the games for free on YouTube, and they've had some pretty awesome attendance records that they've been breaking day after day. So getting to the point that we're continuing to break those and that the PWHL is just as on par with the NHL, right? But it all starts small, starts with supporting your local Jacksonville Lunas with the Jacksonville Icemen and growing it from there. So I think it's really all about growing that community base.
That is so spot on. It is all about the community, because if we don't learn from each other and support each other, it's impossible to grow. And in 40 years from now, I hope that women have equal opportunities and it's no longer, well, boys get this and girls get this. No, I hope it's across the board, because it is important for all of the women and girls in this room to know you have a voice, you have a say, and you get to do what you want to do. And at the end of the day, do not let anybody else tell you otherwise. And for the men in this room, whether you're a father, you're a brother, you're an uncle, you're a cousin, you also have a say in women's sports and propelling this movement forward. Because if we do not unite and support each other as one, there won't be growth. So if you have a daughter now, or you have a daughter in the future, or have a member of your family that is interested in women's sports, support them. Go to their games, repost them on social media, care, because that caring is a domino effect, because you never know who you're going to impact. You never know what little girl or little fan you're going to have an influence on. And at the end of the day, that's all we can matter, is that we put the youth of America and we put them up for success. And we show them that we are equals, and it does matter. And we will be most likely fighting this battle in 40 years. But that's okay, because there's those of us that are on this panel that are going to continue to fight. And I will fight until I'm dead in the ground, probably past then. My grandkids will be like, oh man, Grandma wouldn't stop talking about this, you know? But that's all we can ask for, is that an alliance and support among everyone for women's athletics.
And of course, the hope, of course, is that from hearing from so many of these wonderful panelists and so many of the wonderful women in sports in our community, you guys will continue to fight too. I know our time is a little bit short, but I believe all 4 panelists will hang around if you would like to come up, ask any questions. I don't think that's an issue, because I know some people want to head to their seats with the game starting in about 15 minutes. But thank you all so much for attending this year's Women in Sports panel presented by PNC. And go Ice!